Okay. Hi, this is going to be an overview of what you need to know for Lab 13, renal stuff. So, here we've got a kidney. So, it's not shown on the model, but out here you would have paranephric fat, and then there would be a layer of renal fascia. And then inside of the renal fascia, right up against the kidney, would be perinephric fat. I think of peri as being around the perimeter, and that's how I keep para straight from the perinephric fat. On the outside of the kidney, you have the red fibrous capsule, and then on the inside, you have this outer C shape. That's going to be the renal cortex. And then inside of that is the renal medulla, like middle. So outer C is cortex, the middle is medulla. Within the medulla, you have these pyramid shapes. These are the renal pyramids. At the tip of them is going to be the renal papilla, and that's going to feed in here. This would be your minor calyx. This would be another minor calyx. And then the major calyx would be out here. So the minor is going to be where the smaller segments feed in, and then the major is going to be where the combined one is opening up into the renal pelvis, which is this guy right here. The renal pelvis then is going to feed out into a ureter that would go down to the bladder. Where the kidney tapers in here, we've seen this on a couple other organs, but as it tapers in like that to allow blood vessels and other tubular like stuff to come in, that's going to be a hilus. So this here is the renal hilus. All right, so blood supply. Kidney filters the blood for the body. Roughly, I think they filter something like 180 liters per day. So they're they're doing a lot of filtering. Coming here from the descending aorta would be the
renal artery.
Yeah, the renal artery. That's going to come over, split into segmental artery. Then it's going to go up between the pyramids and column. These are the renal columns between the pyramids, by the way. So anyway, the interlobar artery comes up between the pyramids on the column, and then it curves and goes over this arch. Where it arches it's called the arcuate artery. And then off the arcuate artery, you have these guys, which are going to be your interlobular arteries. And then they're going to split out to go to the glomerulus. And that'll be the afferent artery, or arterial. So if we move over here, we've got your afferent arterial coming in, and then this guy here is going to be the glomerulus, just this part. So afferent arterial comes in, then it splits up into all these smaller vessels. In these, all the blood is going to get filtered out, and it'll move into this space here. The blood that hasn't been filtered, the filtrate removed from the blood moves into this space. The blood itself, what's left, is going to move out the efferent arterial and into some capillaries. We'll switch models here real quick. So if you look here, you have the arcuate artery. The interlobular artery comes up and it branches off. This is your afferent arterial going over to the glomerulus would be in here. And then your efferent arterial comes out here, and it's going to branch off. You've got all these capillaries. This portion here, where it's wrapping around these other tubes, are going to be the peritubular capillaries. And down here, where it's running straight down the nephron loop, that's going to be your vasa recta. Remember, recta is straight up and down, so this is your vasa recta. Once the blood goes through there, it's going to return to the interlobular artery and the arcuate vein. And then vein names are going to follow those of the arteries back out. So you have your interlobular vein into the arcuate vein. Switch models real quick. Now, arcuate vein is coming back here. Then you have the interlobar artery coming down to the renal artery. Interlobar vein coming down to the renal vein. And that's how your blood gets moved around and filtered. So then, switch to this guy. We've got the filtrate that was pulled out of the blood here. Collectively, this whole thing is going to be the renal corpuscle. This part inside is the glomerulus. The capsule around here is going to be the glomerular capsule or Bowman's capsule. And often this open space here would be referred to as the Bowman's space. And then the filtrate is going to move through here and out this guy. And we'll come back over here. So here would be your renal corpuscle. The filtrate's going to move into this really windy tubule. So this is going to be the proximal convoluted tubule. It's all convoluted because it's all twisted up, and it's closer to the glomerulus. So proximal convoluted tubule, and then it's going to drop down here, and this is going to be your thick descending. Then your thin descending, it's going to loop around. You'll have a thin ascending, and then a thick ascending. Let's look at it on this one so you can see it better. Thick descending, thin descending, thin ascending, and then thick ascending. And then you have a distal convoluted tubule. So it's distal because it's on the other side of that loop from the glomerulus. And then you'll have a collecting tubule feeding into a collecting duct. That collecting duct will go back down to the papilla at the tip of the pyramid and then feed in through the minor calyx, major calyx, and then into the renal pelvis on out to the
Ureter.
through the ureter to the bladder. Switch back over here. There's three big processes that are taking place. Inside the glomerulus, you have the blood, the filtrate being pulled out of the blood. That is glomerular filtration. And then, as the filtrate moves through these tubules, depending on your ion gradients and the pressure within the tubule and the blood vessels, other stuff can be absorbed, extra stuff. If your body wants to keep things that have been filtered out, it can be reabsorbed through the tubules into the blood. So that's your second step, is tubular reabsorption. And the third step is exactly the opposite of that. If there's still more stuff in the blood that your body needs to pull out, it can pull it from the blood vessels into the tubules. And that would be tubular secretion. So, in short, the blood's going to get filtered here, filtrate moves down, and then through the nephron loop, there's an opportunity for the things to kind of even out, so you keep what you need to and get rid of what you need to. And then as whatever's left, when you get to the collecting tubule gets dumped into the collecting duct and then on out, like we talked about. So big picture, we've got kidneys, your adrenal glands on top. So here's your veins coming out, arteries going in. What's filtered is going to come out through the renal pelvis into the ureter, which you can't actually see here, and go down to the bladder. Spin this guy around. So here's your bladder. You can tell that this would be a male because you have a prostate and seminal glands, which will be something we talk about in lab 14. But this guy can spin over. This red line is supposed to indicate a thin layer of muscle that wraps the bladder. That's your detrusor muscle. And then you've got this triangle-shaped ligament, which is going to be the trigone. And then the bottom of the bladder here would be your internal urethral sphincter. And then the external urethral sphincter would be in the pelvic wall as that exits. And we'll talk more about particularly the male urethra in the next lab. So that's about it for lab 13.